Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. How are we doing? Good afternoon, Ma. Good afternoon, Mrs. Karima. Nice to have you, Ma. We can't hear you. You are muted. You can unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone at the bottom of maybe your phone or your laptop. Good afternoon, Esther. Good afternoon, Andrew. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm not addressing you by your correct titles. So good afternoon, Grace. We are glad to have every one of you here for the settlement hour. So we would like to hear from you what you expect to get from this program today. So my name is Ifoma. I'm sorry I can't show the video, and I'll be doing a little bit of assistance today. So would anyone like to share what they expect to get from the event of today?
Okay, good afternoon as well. Good afternoon as well. Well, I'm Nanchang. Joy, can you hear me? Can Joy hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so Joy, me, and Ifoma, we are here to give you the best. So if you have anything, you can reach out to us in the course of the meeting. So just as she has started, we want to hear your expectations before we commence. We will soon commence the session, and let's hear your expectation, what you want to take home, and there are things you're expecting. We'll be glad to hear it. Joy, do you have something to say?
Yes. Seriously, today I'm excited about this topic already, and I'm expecting to learn a lot of things, especially in this kind of time when there are lots of disputes to be resolved and a lot of complication in the world that would definitely need an immediate solution to whatever dispute that anyone has. So I'm expecting to learn a lot from today's meeting. Thank you. Hello.
Very much. Yeah, thank you very much. Victor is here with us. We appreciate you all. We can see our mommy Esther Chimogu is here. You can see also our mother Esther, another Esther, she's there, Karima. Ben, Oga Ben, thank you very much for joining us. Please, if you can put on your cameras, please, before we commence. Victor Favor is here with us. We're grateful. Karima, Samira, the name is looking alike. You're all welcome. Nice to have you here. Yeah, Stephen is here. Thank you for joining us. This is interesting to have you all here. So please, can somebody share with us what are your expectations? Let me start with Karima. You are the first. Can you tell us what are your expectations?
Oh, good evening, everyone. My expectations are, since now almost, let's say, anything that has to do with litigation is going down. All we are praying it's the dispute resolution should come up. So we are here to learn a lot from the dispute resolution, and anything that comes from you people, it's welcome to us. We really appreciate, no matter how little it is, we want to learn. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes. Mr. Victor, welcome. Thank you for having you here. Yes, we are happy to have you here. So we will soon commence. Is there any other person that will share with us his or her expectation? Our speaker is here, and we are hoping to have a very exciting moment. Please tell your friends that the session has commenced. Let them join. We'll just give maybe 2-3 minutes, and then we will, or if you want to speak, you can unmute yourself. You can just unmute yourself, and then you on your camera. I know our Informa is going to give us a screenshot at the commencement, and then at the end we are going to also have a screenshot, so we'll know those we've commenced with, and then those who stayed with us to the end. So it's a form of recording, attendance, So thank you. I can see somebody with Hills. Is it HILS? Hills. Hills. Can you tell us your expectations? And you can as well change your name, please. You can rename your device if your name is not on showing properly. You can rename your device so that we can know your name, please. Yes, so we can see Hills. We can see our daddy, James Yero. We are happy to have you. Yes. Yes, amen. Our speaker is praying for us that all our expectations will not be cut short, and it will be wonderful. So we're just giving 2 more minutes, and then we will commence. Yes, it's as if someone wants to speak. We are happy to have the chairman of the governing body of Settlement House with us, person of Roscana Ankama. Please, can you say hello to us? Thank you for joining us. Ma, are you with us?
Hello?
Are you? Yes.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Ma.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yeah. Happy New Year to all of us.
The same to you.
And I pray that this year we will see greater and better things as we march forward, and as we're starting on a very good footing, we will continue to be ambassadors of peace wherever we are. So welcome to 2023, and welcome to the very first training this year. God bless you all.
Amen.
Thank you. Amen. 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 So Ifeoma is going to give us a snapshot as we commence. Please just put on your camera and make sure you are part of this historic event. Yes, put on your camera. Let's have a snapshot as we commence. This is 5:10. We are going to commence. Put on your camera. Ifeoma, give us a snapshot as we commence.
All right, just a minute. Give me a minute. Let me put on my camera.
Oh, great. Okay. So Ifoma, you can start the recording as we begin. Once we commence, you can start the recording. And yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Ifoma, let's know if you have taken the snapshot. Just a minute for the chairman. She will, just a minute. Yes, we appreciate you all for coming, for creating this time and being with us. It's actually an interesting moment. We're happy that you could create this time to be with us. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So please, our camera should be on. Ifoma. Is Ifoma with us?
Yes, I've
I
taken
think she
the
has
snapshot.
taken it.
No, they said everybody should put on his camera, and the chairman says just a minute. I hope she's with us. She will be with us shortly. Okay, so as before she comments, thank you very much for making our time to be with us. My name is Nanchang Nangwan. I am the Executive Director of Settlement House ADR Training Institute. Thank you very much. Please, you can start the recording. Okay.
I'm recording already.
It's all right, okay. My name is Nanchang Nangwan. I am the Chairman of Settlement House ADR Training Institute. We're happy to have our the Chairman of the Governing Body of Settlement House ADR Training Institute. She just greeted us not long ago. And today is another interesting edition of the Settlement Hour. And we are going to be looking at a very interesting topic. And we are fortunate to have, okay, so you have to retake this picture. You have to do this screenshot so the chairman of the governing body will have to do me. Yes. So yeah, she's here. So please, can you on your cameras once again? Let's just do this and then. Yes. Please, your camera on. Be part of the picture. Yes. Great.
I've taken it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much. Okay, so right away, as I said, oh, great, wonderful, wonderful, great, great. Okay, as I said, we are happy to have you all here, and we are going to be considering an interesting topic today. I don't know who can tell us the topic. Does anyone here knows the topic for today? Yes. Just unmute yourself. Let me know. Yes.
Yes.
Who can? Yes. Yes, Amira, go ahead.
Okay. Today's topic is navigating impasse and stalemate in mediation.
Oh, great. That is our topic for today. Wonderful. You know, in the course of settling disputes, some of us who are lawyers, you will come across a lot of factors that will discourage you, possibly to make you feel, let's just forget about this thing. Let's go on with litigation, or due to one factor or the other, somebody will feel, no, I'm not continuing. So today we are going to be looking at how we can navigate our ways through this thing. And then we are happy to have our speaker here. He's an expert in the field. and he has experience. He has, it's wonderful to have him around. He's going to be taking us through. Please, if you have questions, you can drop your questions on the chat box. Yes, drop your questions, and then you will be given opportunity to ask your questions as well at the end of the meeting. So, Joy, are you with us? Put on your camera, and then you introduce the speaker. So as I said before, she reads the profile of the speaker, and then we commence. Settlement House is an institution that actually develops the conflict resolution capacity of people all over. And I believe that there are people who are actually naturally born peacemakers. And all we do is to see how we can shape, that quality they have, and then give them the best so that they can go out there and make peace, be the mediators that they are already. So we shape, we develop, and then we see how people can go out there in a world full of conflict to make a difference. So you can visit our website, www.settlementhouseadr.com. You are going to get all the courses that and the trainings that we offer in the institution, and any other further information, including the governing body, the faculties, and all that you need to be out there. So thank you once again for making out time this evening to be with us. Joy, please quickly read the profile of our facilitator as we commence. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So this is the profile of our speaker, Victor Baba Emmanuel Aligo. Is an ordained minister and a marketplace emissary to his generation. He's an alternative dispute solution and dispute system design consultant and mediation trainer. He is a JAMS Western 2020 Fellow and intern with distinguished mediators and arbitrators at the JAMS office, California, United States. Victor Baba has practiced community mediation, family mediation, and intercultural mediation for 6 years with different entities, including boutique firms and the Federation of Women Lawyers, FIDA, Kenya. He's an advisor to the rector and visiting lecturer at the Global University of Somalia, and is an empaneled faculty for mediation hubs in Nigeria, Lagos, and Kaduna, respectively. He's a mediation expert at Accord International, India, where he trains and mentors mediators from all over the world. At present, he's an fellow at the Institute of Public Policy and International Affairs University, Africa. Baba holds a law degree with a focus on international public law. Additionally, he is a graduate with a magna cum laude distinction in international relations, specializing in peace and conflict studies from the United States International University, Africa. He holds certificates in dispute resolution from Harvard University, program on negotiation, Pepperdine University, Strauss Institute, and the Mediation Training Institute, East Africa. Further, he holds a certificate in refugee and migrant studies from Oxford University. Baba is passionate about his generation and enjoys coaching and mentoring the next generation of mediators, peace builders, and leaders. So we are happy to have you here, sir. Thank you for being with us. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Mr. Nanchan.
profile, Mr. Victor. Over to you, please.
Thank you. Greetings to all of you. I looked at today, I was looking at my closet, and this is what I could find that is closest to Nigeria. Yeah, that's the closest that I could find.
Okay.
That's
It's actually African.
That's nice. Yeah.
I hope it will suffice. I hope Nigerians like this.
Yeah.
We do.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's great. Yes.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to an interesting session today. I believe one of the school of thoughts that I subscribe to should be that there's no monopoly of knowledge. So one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is an engaging intercourse with each and every one of you people. I do believe in the power of cross-pollination, to mean that we can always exchange ideas, and at the end of the day, we can all edify one another. Having said that, I'd like to celebrate Nanchang in a very big way. Thank you for making all this possible. I celebrate what you're doing in Nigeria, and I'm going to be biased with my celebration today. So I celebrate Nanchang. I want to celebrate my good friend from Zambia, Stephen Lungu. I'm sure you guys don't know this, but Stephen Lungu is a senior counsel based in Zambia. I had the privilege of meeting him in the US last year, and from then we've bonded and we've become good friends. And at some point in time, I'll be asking questions as well. Having said that, I would like to celebrate each and every one of you people, and I'm really looking forward to learn, to relearn, and to unlearn from all you people. Having said that, Dan, I'd just like to jump straight to my slides. I think the administrator ought to make me.
I think you can share.
Okay. Only the host can share in the meeting. That's what my gadget tells me.
Okay, so if I'ma assign him a co-host.
Yeah, I've made him a host. He can share now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So just a minute. In the meantime, as I work on that, I'd just like to maybe ask who's ever had or encountered a stalemate in one of their sessions? Who is brave enough and audacious enough to share their experience? Just a minute as I, okay. iCloud, just a minute.
As you are doing that, let me just share briefly. You know, I had a mediation session yesterday, and it happens to be with a lawyer. So, and his clients. So we're in the process of discussion, and then I was hoping that since we are from court, we are going to resolve the matter as quick as possible and report settlement. So I was like, okay, now that we have agreed on the amount, specific amount, his client is not here. I was thinking that he would just put a call through to his client and say, okay, how do you intend to pay this if we can agree? And then he was like, no, that he will call his client later, and then whatsoever the client says, he will tell us how the client is going to pay. I said, no, this is not how to do it. And then he was like, if this is the case, if I don't want to settle the matter, let's go back to court and do it there. I was like, and then he just told the other client, let's go. You know, so I was like, what am I supposed to do in this circumstance, to go and start begging and then say, no, just sit down, you know? So I think that is just a little example.
Thank you for sharing. The interesting thing about our mediation practice is that we'll always have stalemates. And truth be told, stalemates can really hurt. But then again, truth be told, it doesn't really need to affect your practice. I mean, the most accomplished mediators in the room, they've all had scenarios where they have encountered stalemates. And the thing is that it comes with the territory. If you want to venture into mediation, or you have already ventured into mediation, chances are that 1 week from right now, 2 weeks from right now, a month from right now, a couple of months from right now, you will bump into a stalemate. And the thing is that it's not of your doing. That's just how it is. That's how the terrain is. And today we will just get to look at a few strategies on how to navigate. Navigate is our choice of word here because impasses or stalemates, if you like, they are just part of the game. And the earlier or the sooner we realize that, the better it is. So it doesn't really need to sting or hurt your practice. If you've gone through an impasse before, chances are that it has made you a stronger mediator. I'm still looking for my slides. Okay, Nanchang, alternatively, we can have you share from your end. One time in California, in the company of one of the best, if not the greatest mediator walking on the planet Earth, Judge Danny Weinstein, we were doing a big case. It was a mega case by all implications and consequences. The first day, it really went well. And we thought that we were in for a good day on the second day, building on the momentum of the first day. But guess what? On the second day, we encountered a stalemate out of nowhere. And it almost threw us off balance. That just goes to tell you that there are two kinds of stalemates in mediation. There are those stalemates that you see coming, and definitely you prepare and plan for that. But we have stalemates where it hits you out of nowhere and you just have to get your act all together. So in California, I had one of these experiences where we had an impasse that no one saw coming. And trust you me, we had about 4 mediators on the panel. And these are all accomplished, sought after mediators. You look at their diaries are full to 2026. And that just goes to tell you that none of us, as long as you're a mediator, is immune or insulated from stalemates. As he's working on our slides, my simple definition of what a stalemate or an impasse is, if you like, it's a scenario where the parties stop to engage, or for some reason they are uncooperative and uninterested and motivated to compromise. That's the simplest definition of what a stalemate is. And when we were trying to work out a topic for we were asking ourselves, should it be stalemates in negotiations or stalemates in mediation? That's one thing that I'd like us to maybe for a few minutes wrap our heads around. And truth be told, mediation is facilitated negotiation. So whether the topic, I'm just assuming, if we put that the topic was navigating stalemates in negotiations, it would still suffice, because mediation in its simplest form is facilitated negotiation. So I just needed to clear that out. As he is working on our slides, maybe I'd just like to mention a few factors that could trigger an impasse or a stalemate, if you like. And one of the factors should be overconfidence. There are scenarios where you have one of the parties or all parties walk into the room and they all feel confident. They are bold. And there are a number of reasons that could lead to their overconfidence. One of it is the case, one of it could be the strong, how strong their case is. Again, that would depend on the kind of lawyers that have advised or whispered a few words to their ears. So clients would walk in, or disputants would walk into a room and really they are overconfident. And they will begin to tell you stuff like, I mean, why should I compromise? And so with such a scenario, you are likely to bump into an impasse. And there are a few indices that we can use to tell overconfidence. For instance, a client will tell you, I'm 60% sure that if this matter were to proceed in a court of law, things would go my way. So that's a verbal indication of overconfidence that, look, Mr. Mediator, I am 90% confident that if this matter were to end up in a courtroom, the judge would rule it my way. And then, of course, we have nonverbal indicators that we can use to tell or imply that a party is overconfident. I mean, their tone, the tone of their voice, the demeanor of their bodies. All these are indices that you can use to tell that a party is overconfident. And chances are, if you don't have the requisite tools, if you don't put in place a strategy, you are likely to run into a stalemate or an impasse. And then number two, I think we could proceed to the fourth slide, or rather the third slide. We can go to the third slide. As we are doing that, we have beautiful words here that were rehearsed by Abraham Lincoln. He, as early as the 17th century, we already see Abraham Lincoln promoting mediation in an interesting way. And that tells you that mediation has been around for quite some time, but it is gaining momentum. So our agenda today, introduction, we've looked into that, impasses in mediation, and then we'll get to look at preambles to stalemates or impasses, if you like. And then number three, we'll look at strategies for navigating impasses. The thing is that we can navigate, but we cannot circumvent. It's one of those booby traps that we cannot forego, and therefore at some point in your mediation practice, you run into an impasse. And how beautiful it is that we are having this conversation today to equip you with the requisite tools for that purpose. And then last but not least, we will look at recommended text. And as early as now, I just want to mention two great books that every mediator, if you ask me, needs to get a hold of. The first book is Getting to Yes. This is a book that has quite a number of iterations. The first copy, if I'm not wrong, was authored in the early 90s, rather late 70s. And ever since, the book has been a bestseller. It's gone around the world. All mediators have in one voice celebrated the book. The book has been written by Fisher, an amazing gentleman. I have had the opportunity of going through his resume, and some of his presentations, and I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that he is a great mind and a blessing and a gift to the mediation community. And then the other book is by Peter Robinson. Peter Robinson has been a long time professor at Pepperdine University. His work is very provocative and unorthodox because he has attempted over the years to introduce the concept of apology, forgiveness, and reconciliation in mediation, which I feel is interesting, which I feel is very unconventional. And number three, I feel it's very innovative. He is a maverick. That's my choice of word to define him in simple terms. So those are the recommended texts that I'd like us to, at some point, if you have the resources, you can purchase them. I ought to have shared copies of it to Nanchang, but I only have hard copies. So if you go to Amazon, I'm pretty sure that you'll get to have access to the books. These are amazing books. These are the gospel, if you ask me. These are the gospel of 21st century mediation. Having said that, I'd like us to move to our fourth slide. Our fourth slide. That's our second slide. Let's move to our fourth slide. That's our first. Yes. That's my simplest definition of what an impasse is. And in almost all scenarios, an impasse is an implication of the fact that one of the parties is unwilling, is uninterested, or not motivated in simple terms to compromise on their needs, values, and interests. And allow me to say this, that the game of mediation is based on interests. It's a game of interest, just as politics is a game of interest. And as I say this, I am cognizant of the fact that Nigeria is just about to venture into elections, and it's all about interest. It's about the interests of the politicians, and it's the interest of the people. And I pray that the interest of Nigerians will prevail over the interest of politicians. Having said that, interest in my simple, in its simplest form would be goals. Now, every human being has a goal. We all have aspirations. We all have values that are so close to our hearts. And maybe just to look at examples of interest. Now, my examples may not be conclusive, and maybe we'll take time to exhaust them. But I'd just like us to look at some of the most common interests that you will decipher from parties. Accountability. You know, you wronged me, and therefore you need to be held responsible. Accountability is all about responsibility. You need to take responsibility for your actions. So that's what accountability is. Money is another interest that we cannot overlook. In almost all cases, there's going to be a money problem. And therefore, as a mediator, you cannot shy away from the money problem, from the money factor. And I know as Africans, we've grown in houses where the concept of money, you know, conversations around money are very difficult, and so on and so to speak. And as early as right now, I'd really encourage us to begin having sound conversations around money, because all too often in the room, the problem comes down to money. So money is an interest we cannot shy away or overlook. And then there's closure. People just want truth. There are people whose pursuit in the room, you will have maybe two couples in a room, and you know, all of them are shouting at one another, hey, la 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 la, and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, if you dig deeper, the problem is closure. Why do you do this? I want to think of a scenario where you have a couple that is in dispute. Every other time, the husband comes to the house, say 6 p.m., and they always get to have an argument. If you dig deeper, one of the spouses is just trying to know, why do you get to do this? Why are you ever late in the house? Just give me a reason to cling on to. So that speaks to closure. And then compensation. I mean, that's language that all lawyers in the room are familiar with. And then dignity. I mean, every human being wants to be treated important. It's a fundamental interest of every human being that we all want to be treated important, with importance and dignity. And one of my mentors say that when you are dealing with people, when you get to talk about dignity and affirmation, one of the principles in leadership is always acknowledge people in public and rebuke or critique them in privacy. So that's very important. Every time you get to have disputants in your room, it's always an important culture that you want to inculcate into your practice. Treating human beings with dignity and affirmation. And just once more again, I'm going to underscore the principle. Acknowledge men and women in public and critique them in privacy. If you can borrow this, your practice will go a long way. And I'm sure you'll become a decent human being. Always when I am talking to people on the subject matter of mediation, I always try to tell people this, that at the end of the day, after my talk, I want you to be a better human being. If you're a spouse, I want you to be a better spouse. If you are a son and a daughter to somebody, I want you to be a better son and daughter to that person. Because truth be told, the best mediators are amazing human beings. The best mediators, the most accomplished human beings are the best mediators. Now, at times in law, that might not be the case. You can have the best, the shrewdest, the most accomplished are terrible human beings. That's what separates mediators from lawyers. That the best lawyers in the room are always the best human beings that you ever come across. And then relationships as well. Relationships, you have two companies in the room that are at loggerheads at each other. Chances are the reason why they pursued mediation is to preserve and maintain the sacredness of their relationships. I don't need to give a lecture on the importance of relationships, but relationship is a currency. At a personal level, at an individual level, relationship is always a currency. And that's the same thing for corporates. And then we have integrity. I mean, these are all values that as individuals, state corporations, companies and whatnot are always looking at. So these are just some of the common interests that emerge in mediation. Of course, we have many other interests that in the best interest of time, we will not get to look into. And having spoken of interest, I think it's important for me to mention the significance of interest identification skills. That's one of the tools that every mediator needs to have at their toolbox. The ability to identify the interests of the parties. Because at times in the room, you have parties that will speak. I mean, parties can talk. Human beings can talk practically the whole day. And there's nothing with talking the whole day. But the thing is that as a mediator, you need to be equipped with interest identification skills, so that this person is talking at the back of your mind, what they're trying to say in many words is accountability. I want, for instance, if Nanchang and I are having a problem, just a hypothetical scenario, and in the room, I tell the mediator that I want Nanchang to pay dearly. As a mediator, what comes to your mind is accountability. This person is just seeking accountability or closure, for instance. Why did I get to do this, yet we are good friends? So interest identification skills are very prominent. Of course, we'll get to look at interest identification skills sometimes later on, but there are a few things that I could mention about self-identification skills. Of course, listening skills. If you are to decipher or rather pick and decrypt what a party is really trying to say in so many phrases, in so many sentences, in so many paragraphs, and so on and so to speak, listening is going to be important. There are scenarios where I walk into a room and I just straight away tell a party, do you want us to look at this volume of documents? Or do you want us to talk about your interests? What are really your interests here? What are you really looking for that the courts cannot guarantee you, that perhaps by adventure I can guarantee you through this process? So listening is going to be important. active listening, so to speak. And the most accomplished mediators listen with three important organs. Number one, they listen with their ears. Number two, the most efficient mediators listen with their eyes. At this point, you of course realize that much of our communication is nonverbal. So with your eyes, you can really pick a lot when you are in a room with the parties. And therefore, you listen with your eyes as well. And then last but not least, the most efficient, effective, accomplished mediators listen with their hearts. You've got to perceive what's going on in the room. You've got to perceive what's in the heart of the parties. And all these are all practices that as we go about in our practice, we'll get to inculcate or we'll get to learn. All of these are learnable. And so my urge to all of us is that let's learn the art of three-dimensional listening. Listening with your ears, what the party is speaking. Then we have listening with your eyes, just seeing the body language of a human being, or the tonal variations, the structure of their tones, because that tells you a lot. And one of the examples that I'd really maybe project to us right now is, assuming I am a police officer and I am meeting a young man in a corner and it's very dark, and I begin to ask them questions. One of the questions that I could ask is, hey, do you need some help? Right? But then I could ask them, hey, do you need some help? I hope we see the variation in my tone of voice. The first question, hey, can I help you? That's very polite. But then now when I say, hey, can I help you? I don't know whether you see the difference in the structure of my voice. And that really tells you a lot. So that's how a fundamental communication and listening, so to speak, is important to interest identification skills. And then problem-solving skills, again, it's an important fabric of interest identification skills. And then effective communication of interest. That's going to be very important. The other thing that I'd like to maybe draw attention to is the fact that one of our roles, and this is a fundamental role as a mediator, is helping the parties or facilitating the parties better express and articulate their interests, their arguments, their beliefs, and so on and so to speak. So all these are tied to interest identification skills. Many a times parties will walk into a room and they do not know that they do not have the right choice of words to put across. And the thing about communication is that if you have wrongful words in the room, chances are that it will communicate a negative sense to the other party, and that will put them off. One time I went to the hospital and I was having a conversation with one of the nurses, and she told me that there's a hospital language. There are certain words that we use when we are in a hospital that ordinarily are out there, they would be appropriate. And therefore, what she was trying to tell me is that every time you're in a hospital facility, there are appropriate words that you need to use. And that's the same thing with mediation. There are appropriate words. The language of mediation is interest, like I had put it earlier on. That's the vernacular. That's the native language in mediation, interest. And so as a mediator, we need to have a grasp of some of these words: accountability, affirmative words, words like sorry. They really look very simple words, but at the end of the day, they really communicate a lot. And I cannot overemphasize on that. If we were to judiciously prosecute on the subject matter of interest identification skills, probably it would take a whole hour or a whole day just looking into that. And I'm really, I am acquainted to the fact that some of us know these skills, and therefore are probably, it will take a whole session just to talk on that. And then we've got, with that, I'd like us to maybe proceed to some of the indices that I mentioned. A confidence, where you have parties being very confident, chances are that you are likely to run into an impasse. I don't want to get over myself, but I'd like us to look at some of the factors or indices that really could lead to a stalemate. Hurling of threats during the negotiation dance, that's, that's very straightforward. You don't need rocket science education to tell that. The instances where you have parties hurling insults in the room. I remember at the height of the United States presidential election in 2016, Donald Trump was really annoyed by a fox, and at some point he went around issuing threats that, if I don't have so and so doing the questions or interrogations, I'm going to quit that. That tells you that threats are really, they could really jeopardize the process. And in scenarios where you have threats by parties, one of the most important things that you can do is, of course, you are the steward of the process. Now, one of the fundamental roles of a mediator, of course, is designing a process. And as the architect and designer of a process, of course, you have control over the process. In a scenario where you have a party very irritated, incensed, and so on and so to speak, and they begin to speak a language that is inappropriate in a mediation room, one of the tools that you have is, calling the parties to the ground rules, or even splitting the process, calling for a break. Let's go for a break. And maybe thirdly, what you can do is you can break the session. If it was a joint session, what you could do is break the session, go into other rooms, have the parties go to separate rooms. That's how you disarm such kind of a conduct which may really be inappropriate. And this could harm the process, because the process of mediation is a pretty delicate and fragile process. And so diligence is going to be important from you as a mediator. Of course, strong emotions as well. Once in a while, we have parties get to express strong emotions for various reasons. Maybe what the other party said really went bad with them, and so that arouses strong emotions. That if care is not put into consideration, it might jeopardize or compromise the process. And then goodwill and enthusiasm running low. There are scenarios where the parties, goodwill, parties walk into the room and they're all signaling positive energy and so on and so to speak. And there are times where parties begin to, their goodwill or their enthusiasm, their motivation for settlement begins to run low. So that's one thing that you really want to, you want to look into. And this is why, like I said earlier on, listening with your ears, listening with your eyes, listening with your heart goes a long way in recording, temperatures in the room. What's a goodwill? And goodwill here is trust. How much do the parties trust you that that a settlement is going to be possible? And that's the thing about mediation. The product, apart from the service being the product, you as the mediator, you are the product. Are you diligent enough to cultivate trust with the parties? Are you a human being that people are comfortable around with? That's something that, we need to work on. And it cannot be taught. There are certain, unfortunately or fortunately, there are certain skills in mediation that cannot be taught in a classroom. For instance, just being comfortable with human beings in a room. Are you the kind of an individual that generates positive energy in the room? in a way that the parties can really trust you, that they can confide in you as a human being. So that's one thing you want to look into. And then discovery of new facts. A majority of us here are lawyers. And at times when new facts emerge, definitely it's going to have a ramification on the case. And that's possible in mediation. I remember one time we were having a 2-day mediation, and I remember on the second day, one of the parties approached us and told us that we have discovered new set of facts that we feel will have, it will tilt the balance of power. And already definitely that projected a sense of goodwill and enthusiasm in a settlement running low. So those are some of the things that you want to have at the back of your mind, or these are factors that you can use to predict that an impasse is just about to happen. And earlier on, I spoke about there are impasses where you don't see it coming, and there are stalemates that you see coming. And so when you run into such a scenario where one of the parties, approaches you and tells you that, look, my lawyers have told me this and that new facts have emerged, and chances are that it will bolster or it will strengthen my case. So you ought to look for that. Overconfidence, I spoke about that. And then, of course, uncooperative actions. At the heart and soul of mediation is a concept of the parties coming together and cooperating. And if the parties cannot cooperate, that jeopardizes the whole process. So it's very important for us to look or take that into consideration. And so these are some of a few scenarios that you can use to predict a stalemate is just about to happen. And of course, wisdom will tell you that you ought to prepare enough for that. So with that said and done, I'd like us to jump into some of the strategies that have really worked for me, and some of the strategies that I've had mediators, of course, accomplished mediators say work for them. And one of it is priming the parties through small gains. At one time, I was in the company of two ladies who happened to be amazing human beings and accomplished, excellent mediators. And I used a word that they told me that that word is pejorative. By that I mean that word has negative implications. And I used the word grooming of parties. And they told me that word, it's very pejorative, it's derogatory. In simple terms, that word has negative implications, and so on and so to speak. And they told me that the appropriate word is priming. The whole logic behind negotiation or mediation is priming the parties, preparing the parties to get to the famous or magical word settlement or yes. Your role as a mediator is to prime the parties. It's to build trust in them that a settlement is possible, that we don't really need to walk out of the room with the kind of mindset that we walk into the room. And that brings my mind, takes my mind to the Riskin's greed. I don't know how many of us are familiar with the Riskin's greed, but anyway, Riskin talks about three kinds of mediators. We have facilitative mediators, and then of course we have evaluative mediators, and number three we have transformative mediators. And I am of the opinion that we have four categories of mediators. We have facilitative mediators, we have evaluative mediators. Number three, we have transformative mediators. And number four, we have versatile mediators. And versatile mediators are mediators who inculcate, who envision the three kinds of mediation: facilitative, evaluative, transformative. And when you combine all these factors or mindsets or paradigm shifts, if you like, you have a great mediator in the room. So at the end of the day, the most accomplished mediators who in some way are able to blend and fuse all these kinds or schools of thoughts of mediation: the evaluative, the facilitative, and the transformative. And transformative mediators, allow me just to have a bias around transformative mediators. Our transformative mediators see conflicts as opportunities for growth, for robust growth. And therefore, if you are one who is inclined to the school of thought of mediation as a transformation vehicle, chances are that as soon as the parties walk into the room, you begin to coach them. That's the word that in these so many words that I've been trying to drive at. You coach the parties through small wins. Everyone likes winning, truth be told. And that's why mediation is all about win-win scenario. And the thing here is, if you prepare your parties gradually, getting to the big yes, but through the small wins or the small yeses, every other time in the room, when you get an opportunity to speak to the mediators, encourage them, like I put it earlier on, acknowledge the good things about them. But of course, talk about rebuke them for some of the wrong doings that you see in the room. And so the idea here is coaching the parties to get to the big yes. And the idea here is communicating to the parties that, look, you don't have to throw there's a metaphor, allow me to use this, a metaphor, that you don't have to throw the baby with the dirty water. Some of us here who are parents probably, you know this better than I do, that you don't throw away the baby after you've washed the baby with the dirty water. That's what you are trying to inform the parties here through the small wins, that look, we have this win here, we have this. And that just goes to tell you that if we fall, chances are that today we will walk out with a settlement in the room. So that's what priming the parties is in simple terms. Always, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this again. I'm going to say this again. Acknowledge the parties in the room. Always acknowledge them. When you get to speak to them, always start by that. I'm so grateful. If you are making, it's like a pep talk. I'm so grateful that we are still here in the room. Things are not working out, but we are still in the room. And these are some of the good things that this far we have. And that goes a long way to getting to the big yes. And then there's the use of private caucuses to uncover small interests. Earlier on, I talked about a behavior that is uncooperative. And the thing that you do is go to the ground rules or break So these are this is one of the strategies that you can use. Hello, is somebody speaking? Is somebody speaking?
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
So breaking, thank you. So breaking joint sessions. And breaking joint session simply means that you have the parties in different rooms. Or if you're operating from one room, you can tell the other party in the most peaceful of ways that, I'd like you to walk outside the room as I talk to this party. And of course, everything that we get to speak in the room is confidential. And once you step out the room, once you step again inside the room, the same will be accorded to you. So at this point, again, you want to echo to them the importance and the significance of confidentiality, rule of confidentiality, which is will be treated or will be accorded non-disclosure privileges. And once you walk into the room, when I get to speak to you, the same will be accorded to you. It's important that you get to stress and echo this to the party. then of course, the controversy and the beauty of framing is this: as somebody that marks the limit of my world, to tell you how communication is very important. Words, some of our communications in the room can reframe, or they can reflame control. And therefore, mastery of communication, mastery of words is going to be important.
Okay. Mr. Victor, we are not hearing you.
Sorry about that. I was just saying that what transformative mediators do at the end of the day is draw the attention of the parties to the fact that it's a problem that we have here. And what you're doing is divorcing the problem from the personalities involved or the issues, divorcing the issues from the personalities involved. And that's a skill that I cannot stress more than this. So reframing goes a great deal in navigating stalemates. And then the other tools, of course, are the partners, watners and mlatners. And this is very obvious. I know some of us know, of course, best alternative to a mediated or a negotiated arrangement, or if you like, of course, we have the worst alternative to a negotiated or mediated agreement, and then we have mlatners. And the idea simply here is painting a crystal clear picture of their cases. And that's a skill that most of us who are lawyers trial advocacy skills have is to paint a crystal clear picture of the case. And what you're doing to the parties is a makenesses of the case. That's what you are trying to paint to a client, that this is how your case looks like. And at times in mediations, they really work, because you can have very overconfident clients walking in. And one of your role as a mediator is being an agent of reality. And so you ought to communicate this to them. You ought to draw their attention to the fact that their case is not as strong as they thought it was. And what you are doing to the parties is bringing them closer to reality. And so these skills go a long way in helping the parties navigate or go beyond the controversy of stalemates, and then work the parties to agree on a procedure for addressing unresolved issues. Truth be told, not every case that hits a stalemate was destined for agreement at the end of the day. That's one thing that one of my mentors told me, that not every case is destined for an agreement. And there are very reasons for that. There are very reasons that we can use to rationalize that. Simply put, maybe the case was not ripe for mediation. There are cases that are not mature enough for mediation. And therefore, whether you mediate over it or not, chances are that you will not hit or arrive at an agreement. And so that's just one of the unfortunate things in mediation, that at times we'll get to have a case unresolved. But having said that and done, there are certain nitty-gritties within such a case that can be resolved. And so what you tell the parties is that you celebrate the wins that you have, but then you can always tell them that we can always work out on the unresolved issues. Again, I've had experiences where parties tell me that, perhaps we were not ready for an agreement, and they will walk out the room, and 2 weeks later on, they will give you a call that somehow, we arrived at an agreement. And so that's a reality that as mediators, we need to have at the back of our mind, that there are certain cases where you sit down with the parties, you will secure some wins, but at the end of the day, you will not have wins on substantive issues. But that's just how it goes. 2 weeks, a month down the line, or even 12 months down the line, the parties will call you and they will tell you, look, we somehow sat down over a cup of coffee and we were able to agree. There's a famous case about two great friends who ventured into business. Of course, they started as friends. They were golfers. And with time, they said that, let's get into business. And one of the interesting clauses in their contract was that every other time they'll get to have a dispute, they'll get to sit down, lock themselves in a room before going to a courtroom. And one time it happened that they had a disagreement. And as a clause in their clause in their business agreement stipulated that they closed themselves in a room. So they closed themselves in a room, and somehow they sat down, and when they walked out of the room, an agreement was reached at. And this was without their lawyers in the rooms. That just goes to tell you how mediation can be very therapeutic, how it can build bridges that are just about to burn, or how it can build bridges that were burnt, or how it can be a healing process to some of the parties. It's very therapeutic, and I cannot stress on that. So work the parties. Remember, at the end of the day, you are not in dispute. The dispute is theirs, and therefore you make them work towards an agreement. One of my mentors says that at times when hell is just about to break loose and you have a stalemate, at times you just need to tell the parties that, this is your dispute. At the end of the day, I'm going to walk back home a happy man, or I'll drive back home, or I'll fly back home a happy man. I'll get back to my home. I'll get to smile with my family. I'll get to smile at my wife. I'll smile to my kids, and I will sleep a peaceful man. By you, the parties, how is this going to be for you? Is your wife expecting you to go back in the house with an agreement at the end of the day? Are your kids, looking forward to something at the end of the day? So as a mediator, one of your roles is drawing the parties to realities. These are some of the realities that you draw the attention of the parties to. And when you get to successfully draw their attention to such scenarios, what you're doing is making the parties work. Make them work. Because at the end of the day, they are the one in dispute. Or they are the ones who are just about to have their relationship burn. And so that's what we get to do. And then, of course, the other skill that, before I get to a mediator's proposal, is the use of questions. Questions are very powerful. And I know in law schools, we'll be taught about the significance of questions. These are some of the simple questions that maybe I'd like us just to run through them, that you ask the parties at times. This is a question that you can shoot to a party. What do you think would be the most effective thing we could do right now? That's making the parties work. That's making them sweat for an agreement. What do you see as a consequence of that option that you chose? Another question, important question, is what do you see as the consequence of those options that are available? So you are putting the options to the parties, and then of course you are drawing their attention to that. These are the options that we have at the table. What's the consequence of these choice, and so on and so to speak. And then this is a powerful trick that I always tell mediators or tell clients. Please help me help you. Very powerful. Help me help you. Help me help you. You are having a problem and I want to help you, but help me to help you solve that problem. Very powerful. The words they sound very simplistic, but they are very powerful. And then last but not least, we have, what could we do at this point that would be most helpful to you? That's very important. Questions are very important when you are having an impasse. And questions are going to be important with interest identification skills. So that's very important. Questions are very important. I cannot overemphasize on that. It's one of the most important tools in your toolbox as a mediator. And then we have the mediator's proposal. And a mediator's proposal, in simple words, is a recommendation by the mediator. Now, look, I know somebody is asking, what's the place of a mediator in mediation, a process where you have a party autonomy? Because at a face value, what a mediator's proposal does, because this is a proposal from the mediator, just as the word is, it's a proposal from the mediator to the parties. And proposals can be procedural, they can be substantial. By procedural, I mean that you're proposing to the parties a different procedure of how to get to the yes. And substantive can be some of the issues that are involved, the dispute itself. You can propose to the parties a solution, a possible solution. That's what mediator's proposal is all about. I know in the US, the mediator's proposal is very popular. In places like Australia, it's not popular. In places I know like UK, it's very popular. In places like New Zealand, it's very unpopular. And how do I tell this? It's because I've been into rooms with mediators from around the world, and every time you get to mention the word mediator's proposal, they are like, oh my goodness. And they will ask questions like, but I thought, a party autonomy or self-determination was a fundamental, a bedrock principle of mediation. But the thing here is that with a mediator's proposal, it has to do with the consent of the parties. If say Nanchang and Stephen are having a dispute and they already hit a stalemate, one of the things I can tell them is this: Nanchang, I know that in this process, you're guaranteed of self-determination. But I want to ask you this, with your consent, can I propose this? If I propose this, Mr. Nanchang, are you willing to accept this? Mr. Nanchang, if I proposed this and I'm willing to convince the other party that this is a possible agreement, are you willing to consent to that? Mr. Nanchang will give me a yes.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, of course.
Then I'll go to the other. Yes, thank you. Then, of course, I'll go to the other room where I have Stephen. And how I come to Stephen, I would come in the same way that I approached Nanchang. I'll tell Stephen, the other party is willing to do X, Y, Z. If you do X, Y, Z. That's how you communicate a mediator's proposal. And the wisdom behind
So, Mr. Nanchan, please, can you tell the speaker he's muted? Let him unmute his speaker, please.
Am I now audible?
Yes,
Hello?
you are. Yes, you are.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Oh, thank you. I was talking about a mediation that I had in the US with one of the most accomplished female mediators. And this was a dispute between a biological mom and a biological daughter. And this is an Asian family that migrated to the US. And they only had $50 when they migrated to the US, probably in the 70s. And over the years, with hard work, determination, perseverance, they built a multi-million dollar empire. And at some point, there were disputes between the mom and one of her daughters. And I remember in 2011, the mom actually sued the daughter. And the case went on to 2016, it was not resolved. In 2019, the daughter sued again, the mom. And so this matter was directed for mediation. And at the start of the day, we were very facilitative. By facilitative, I mean that we were just creating a conducive environment for the parties to speak. But it turned out that the parties were not in good terms at all, to the point that they didn't want to be in rooms. This was a virtual mediation, of course. And so what we did was break the parties into separate rooms. And so the case went on and on and on and on. And at midday, we had already migrated from being facilitative to being evaluative. And by evaluative here, I mean that presenting the parties with an evaluation, an analysis of their cases. And before the day ended, we were transformative. By transformative, we told the parties, look, in the grand scheme of things, at the end of the day, you always be a mom and a daughter. But what kind of a mom do you want to be to your daughter? And this was a woman who was, I think, in her early 80s, and the daughter was in her middle 50s. And we told them that, look, a peace is guaranteed if we pour our souls and heart into this process. And so by doing that, what we offered the parties was a mediator's proposal, that if the daughter does X, Y, Z, and the mother is willing to do A, B, C, D, we can have peace at the end of the day. And that was a mediator's proposal. That's how we got an agreement. And at the end of the day, we saw the daughter, of course, she was not confident and comfortable enough to speak directly to the mom, but she spoke through us that I want to tell this to my parents, that I know our relationships have been very tumultuous. We haven't had the best of mother-daughter relationships, but I want to tell my parents with this agreement that I'll be a better daughter. And I want us to work on the burnt bridges that we have had over the years. And she went on to say that she would love her children to meet their grandparents. That's the power of a mediator's proposal. And there are 4 commandments or guidelines, if you like, that govern the process of a mediator's proposal. Of course, it has to be the last resort. There is no way mediator, speaking now to you as my brothers and sisters, there is no way, brothers and sisters, that individuals can walk into your room and you already have a solution to them before getting to hear them. So it's very important that we get to realize this, that it's always the last option on the table. And you're doing this simply because you want the mediator, you want the disputants to have something to grasp on. And then prior consent is going to be important. Like I had illustrated earlier on, you get to say words like, with your consent. And of course, remind the parties of the power of confidentiality. That, you know, this process is confidential, this process is a party-driven and so on and so to speak. So draw their attention to that fact, that of course, self-determination is important, but are you willing to give me an opportunity to work out something for you parties? Are you willing to give me an opportunity to convince the other party that an agreement is possible? So that's what a mediator's proposal is in simple terms. And then of course we have bracketing. In everyday lives, we get to do negotiations. And I'll just illustrate what bracketing is. We are in the market. Again, I'm going to engage Nanchang. Let's assume that Nanchang sells automobile vehicles, German automobiles, and I want to buy a German automobile. So I approach Nanchang as a bazaar who sells vehicles, and at some point we get to have a stalemate in our negotiation. And this is what I would tell Nanchang. Are you willing to come to X? Are you willing to come down to X if I come up to Y? That's what bracketing is. And bracketing is it's very efficient. I've seen it. I've seen mediators use it very efficient, effective in trying to navigate an impasse. So what you're trying to tell the parties is, are you willing to come to an X if I rise to Y? So that's what bracketing is in negotiation. And of course, there is a facilitating mutual concession. Concession is a language of mediation. Are you willing to add an X if I subtract a Y? That's the language here. And then of course, it's the mediator who initiates the bracketing. Or at times you can advise the parties. Where you have parties at stalemate, you can tell one of the parties, look, I mean, why don't you use bracketing? Go sit down with your constituency, or if it's a company, in a scenario where you have a mediation of two companies involved. With companies, you have constituencies. Of course, with a company, you have their representative, you have their legal team, and so on, and so to speak. And so what you tell their representative is, why don't you go sit down with your parties and use bracketing, so that a solution is made. With that said and done, brothers and sisters, that marks the end of my presentation. Of course, there are many things that could have been said, but in the best interest of time, I'd like us to bring it at end to that point. I know so many of you are at your workplaces. You could be at your workplaces. You want to go home. Myself, in Nairobi right now, it's 8:30 p.m. So I'm doing this from home. So I'd just like us to maybe get to have questions and answers and maybe cross-pollinate. So I return the floor back to Mr. Nanchang. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Victor, for this wonderful and very explanatory session. Thank you also to all the participants. I think there are some questions that are on ground. Our time is fast spent. So with the permission of all of you, I can just ask if we have anyone who wants to ask a question, or read out the questions that are already sent. Mr. Victor, I've sent some of the questions to you. Maybe you can look at them briefly. So, any question? Where he looks at.
Okay, let me look at the chat. We have a question here from a device Huawei Y9 2018. The question is, where mediation skills, this is an interesting one, where mediation impasse defies navigation despite the skills of the mediator. At this point, one would have wished they had initiated litigation in the first place. I'm sure parties will not be ready to foot mediation bills. Who is the loser here? And is it wise to bill parties further? Kindly advise on the best approach to make things user-friendly generally. Thank you, sir. This is from TY. I've seen, this is from TY Atiku, Taraba State, Nigeria. Thank you so much for your question. Billing is one of the most important subject matter of discussion in mediation that we rarely often get to talk about. And usually when I get such a question, I use a metaphor of a hospital. When you go to a doctor and the doctor has done all that a doctor can do, and the patient is not well, at the end of the day, you get to pay the doctor. That's how it is. And even in litigation, there are times where you don't get to fully, adequately get the job done for the litigant, but at the end of the day, you get paid. So usually, when it comes to billing, parties should bill you the first thing. That's non-negotiable. Parties should always bill you first, because this is a process. There's a saying that it takes two to tango. Yeah, I guess tango is an Italian dance. That's the same thing here. I mean, we don't have all the solutions in the world. Our role as mediators is just to create a conducive environment for the parties to negotiate. And where possible, we coach the parties. Where we can transform the parties, we can transform them. And so that's my simple answer to that question. And definitely, yes, there are cases that are brought for mediation that are for some reason premature, or for some reason they are not ripe for mediation at that point in time. But that doesn't mean that such cases cannot be brought for a second process of mediation. No, that's not it. I mean, there are scenarios where parties will walk into a mediation process and they won't walk out with an agreement. But after a short while, they get to have an agreement. In such a scenario, what happens? So what I'm saying in so many words is this: make sure that the parties always pay you. And parties will always pay you for the good work that you do. That's my response to that question. And the nice presentation, sir. Thank you. I'm blessed and opportunity to be among this group. Bless you, sir. Beautiful. Those are some of the questions that I have.
Okay. I think you check your WhatsApp. I sent some
my WhatsApp
personally to you so that you can attend to them as quick as possible, please.
Okay.
All right. While Mr. Victor is checking the WhatsApp, can I just add something to this question?
Go ahead, please.
Yes, please do.
Yes. When parties go into mediation, there is no way that they will come out the same, whether there is a stalemate, an impasse, disagreement, or a solution is avoided. Once they have submitted themselves to mediation, there is this possibility, or there's a window, or there's a door that has been opened for them to always come back to mediation, whether they go for litigation or arbitration or any other means. There is a door that is open. They are aware that, there's a possibility that we can reconvene to the mediation table. So there is no loser in this. Actually, it gives an opening and gives a variety of options to resolve the conflict. Far it be from a mediator to insist that you must resolve every conflict. The speaker has clearly said it, and I want to stress it, that it is not possible that a human being will solve every problem, but there is a mitigating factor that you have introduced to the problem.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I love that.
Thank you very much.
I love that. I have a few questions here. One of the questions here that is very provocative is, what's the difference between manipulation and negotiation? And my response to that is that with negotiation, it's a dance. In America, they call it the negotiation dance. And so when you have a stalemate, the negotiation dance has come to a stop. So that's what a stalemate or an impasse is, the mediation dance coming to an end. And so the thing about negotiation is that it's a dance of the parties. Now, you as a facilitator, you are creating the right atmosphere, the right mood, the right attitude in the room, the right kind of music for the parties to dance. So that's what makes negotiation different from manipulation. Because with manipulation, you are directly controlling the parties. And in mediation, what the mediator does is that we control the process. We don't control the parties. We control the process. That's what separates negotiation or mediation from manipulation? I hope that's very elaborate. As I look to other questions, the other question is, how do you become proficient in negotiation? Again, identify your interests. You already have a proficient negotiator. Negotiation in everyday life, we get to do negotiations. When you are telling your wife, for instance, you know, honey, today I want us to cook chicken. That's a negotiation. Or when your wife calls you as a man, today I want us to go out I want us to go out for dinner. That's negotiation. So it's really at the heart and soul of negotiation is interest identification. That's one thing that we really need to place a high premium on, interest identification. And even when I look at things from an international perspective, many a times, African governments get to have the wrong end of a stick in agreements with other countries from the West or Asia, because our negotiation skills are really wanting. We are yet to get to a point where we have identified our interests as a continent. And so when we go to the drawing board, when we go to the negotiation table, these are our interests. And can we articulate our interests clearly, elaborately, and so on and so to speak? So it's a general problem that I see in the African continent. Maybe our foreign departments or departments of foreign affairs, they need to really employ more effort into negotiation. So that's how you become an efficient negotiator. Identify your interests. And number two, do you have the power of language to articulate, to represent your interests? Because remember, at the end of the day, at some point I alluded during my presentation that as a mediator, you are one of your roles is to help the parties, facilitate the parties, articulate, profoundly represent their interests, and so on and so to speak. So that's how you become a proficient. That's how you become proficient in negotiation. Of course, negotiation is a topic that will take a whole day for us to effectively and proficiently prosecute. So identifying your skills. Number two, articulating your skills, representing your skills, and so on and so to speak. And then number three, maybe, are you flexible enough? Because flexibility is going to be important in mediation. The language of mediation is interests. The language of mediation is concessions. The native language of mediation is compromise. So compromise is going to be important in how we become proficient in negotiations. And then how do you break the stalemate in negotiation? Remember, it's a dance that has, as I pointed earlier on, it's a dance that has stalled. And some of the tools that we mentioned was, if this was a joint session, break the parties into independent rooms. So breaking caucus is going to be important in that. And then the other thing is drawing the attention of the parties to the reality. You're an agent of reality as a mediator. And then, of course, you're an agent of conscience, of consciousness. So these are tools that you can use to draw the attention of the parties to the negotiating table, that after all, your case is not strong enough. That's a skill that you can use to draw the attention of the party. Your case is not strong enough. If you went to a courtroom, chances are that this is how the judge would rule. And here you're drawing the attention of the parties to precedents, of course, judicial precedents. That's why I keep on telling mediators that much of your work as a mediator is behind the scene. Your success at the end of the day is attributable to what you have done behind the scenes. And what do I mean by behind the scene work? Behind the scene work entails calling the parties. If you've had the opportunity to do that, call the parties, speak to them. What are your interests? Draw their attention to basic ground rules. That, once we come for this process, this is what I expect from you. And this is what you expect from me. And so what you are doing is setting and managing expectations of the parties. That's going to be very important. Behind the scene work. Call the parties. know what's their interest, and so on and so to speak. There are scenarios where you tell the parties, look, I know you have a good case and all that kind of work. You have volumes of documents to substantiate your case. But what are your interests? This is a skill that I've used. I've asked parties that, look, I know you have a strong case and so on and so forth. But for once, can we place aside all these volumes of documents? I know these are the wordings of your lawyer or advocate, but I want you to speak to me. And I use words such as in your own language. What do you feel is the problem here? In your own words, what do you think is a possible agreement here? And so on, so to speak. So those are some of the skills that, of course, you use to navigate. Stalemates. There's a question here: how do you resolve the conflict between the government, military, and the egos? Of course, here you have political considerations, and that's a case that probably we will take a whole day just to look into that. But at the end of the day, trust you me, agreements are settled based on interests. So if you can navigate through the cases and flesh out their interests, I am pretty sure that you can have an agreement at the end of the day. And then how do you mediate in divorce and child custody? Two very important things here. I've done such cases. I've had the privilege of doing such cases at the Federation of Women Lawyers, the one in Kenya. And what usually we do is this: where you have a divorce, if the parties are interested in a divorce, you give them that. If a divorce is what they want, and cases where you have gender-based violence, I think it's very important that I get to mention this. Where you have violence involved, it's in the best interest of the parties that you keep them separate. And for child custody is simple. You have the whole concept of the best interest of the child. So that's one of the principles that is going to be of prime consideration in such cases. What's in the best interest of the child? So once you have factored that in, the other thing that you want to draw the attention of the parties to is having a workable arrangement. Draw their attention to having the matter prosecuted in a courtroom and having them agreeing on issues or having them agreeing on solutions that are mutual to them. And in other parts of the world, it's a simple case because the parties know what they want. And that's what you facilitate. You facilitate them get what they want from the process. So with child custody, you just speak to them. What kind of an arrangement would work for you? And of course, here the best interest of the child is prime. Another principle that when you're looking at such cases is where gender-based violence is involved. So you want to really tread carefully when you have such cases. And then another question is, as an ADR member, when someone reports a complaint to us and we sent an invitation letter to the guilty person and he refused to honor the invitation letter, is there any penalty or punishment against him? If there is not, then the law should be introduced. Secondly, secondly, why is it that when we send an invitation letter, most of the time, they refer the case to court without honoring our invitation? Now, there are two things that you seem to bring to my attention. One, where you have court annexed mediation. I don't know this. I'm not so sure about. I'm not so sure about the situation on ground in your locality, but if you have court annexed mediation, definitely the role of the court is going to be important here. The court at some point will have to flex its muscle. I know there are jurisdictions in Nigeria that have adopted the whole concept of a multi-door courthouse approach. And those state, for instance, I know has a multi-door courthouse approach to dispute. By a multi-door courthouse approach to dispute, I mean that the court is a house that should have multiple options for parties to have their disputes resolved. Litigation, of course, is one of the options. Mediation should be an obvious option, and then, of course, arbitration. arbitration is very common and popular in most jurisdictions in Africa. And so a multi-door courthouse should be a solution to this a question. And some of you can actually propose some of these ideas to your legislators. That it's maybe time for us to have the whole concept of a multi-door courthouse. And the beauty of a multi-door courthouse is you have ADR programs that are sponsored, that are driven, and that are enforced by the court. So that's one of my possible response to that question. So how do you avoid deadlocks? Again, we've been looking at that, and then seems more like the difficulties people try to avoid in litigation are gradually popping up in ADR. Please allay my fears. We are not moving in circle. Thank you. That's an important point that I need to mention to us. Definitely, these are human beings. Of course, litigants. It's litigants are coming to mediation with their mindset of litigation, and that's one of the problems that we have right now within the continent. We live in very litigious societies, and even with the introduction of mediation, mediators, fortunately or unfortunately, the same mindset of litigation has been brought into mediation. And so we need to do lots of work in terms of introducing the culture of mediation and so on and so to speak. These are some of the questions that I've just randomly looked at. When will the training commence? There's somebody asking, when will the training commence? I would like to have the materials and certificate at the end of the training. Must the payment be now? How does one become proficient? We've looked at all that. And then I have, for the negotiating party, how much is too much compromise when settling a dispute through mediation? The question, again here, at the heart and soul of that is interest. What are the interests of the parties? If you are representing a party, what are their interests? And then what boundaries and values are useful in settling disputes in this matter? Of course, the ground rules of mediation. It's a confidential process. It's a process that is driven by the parties. Party autonomy is very important. Ethics of mediations are going to be very important. Again, I will need a whole session just to talk about the ethical principles that are involved in mediation. But some of the principles are confidentiality, neutrality, party autonomy, impartiality, competence. You, as well as a mediator, you ought to be very competent, and so on and so to speak. And of course, as a mediator, you don't have a dog in the fight, as they put it in America, or you don't have a horse in the race. So those are some of the boundaries and values that govern the process of negotiations in dispute resolution.
Thank you very much.
What is the aim of
Yes, thank you very much. If we continue to answer questions, we may not leave this place. I must appreciate you for this wonderful session. I can see a lot of persons, our people. Thank you, Mr. Vikram, for gracing this occasion. Habib Bello Dembo, thank you for coming. We are very grateful. So with this, I don't know if Mr. Vikram will be around, if he can, maybe if he's with us, he can just say one or two things, and then I will call on the chairman of the governing body to say the closing remark, and then we are good to go.
Thank you, Danchang. My only question for Victor is, Victor, when am I getting that beautiful shirt from Kenya? That is, but otherwise, Victor, always a pleasure listening to
you. Thank you so much, Mediator Vikram. I celebrate you. It's really an honor to have you here. Thank you.
And I'm just sorry, I'm sorry, I'm not putting on my video. I'm not putting on my video. It's 11:20.
All right. I'll get back to you about the shot.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Yeah. With this, let me call the chairman of the governing body to say the vote of thanks and the closing remarks. Thank you very much. for being with us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vikram. Namaste.
Namaste.
Good. Honestly, Mr. Victor, we can't express our appreciation enough. But in the African way, we want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you. You have done wonderfully well, and I want to congratulate all the participants. What you have just listened to is Harvard International Masterclass stuff. And I mean what I am saying. You are lucky to be part of this meeting this evening. Go out there, improve your competence, sell out yourself, and keep learning. I have learned so much this evening, and I know that with further meetings and further trainings, we keep learning from one another. Thank you so much, Mr. Victor. I'm hoping that you will invite us to Kenya one of these days, and then we might invite you to come physically. We have dinner, and then maybe we'll go to New Delhi for...
Yeah.
Mr. Vikram will come to New Delhi for Diwali, maybe one of these years. Do you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that would be beautiful.
Yeah.
I want to thank the chief executive for organizing this very impressive training. We're very proud of you, Mr. Nancha.
Thank you.
We
Thank
ask
you.
that you will keep growing, more grease to your elbows. And to the media crew, thank you very much for being on top of the game. And I believe that next time we will do better. I want to advise as many participants that are available, please keep training yourself, keep learning, and then invite others to learn more. Invite them for the training. Our trainings are very subsidized and very, very well equipped. You can testify to it. You know that you have heard the best. I believe that we keep growing. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you and bye.
So finally, please, those around, turn on your camera. Let us have a final snapshot. Please ensure you are part of it. Put on your camera and let's have the final shot.
Okay. Please put on your cameras. Can we have a full view of everybody around? Can we put on our cameras? Put on your cameras so that we can see you.
Informa, please.
Cameras, are they on? So we can all see you.
This is interesting. Please, let's see your beautiful faces. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, wow. This is interesting. Yeah, please give us a snapshot. This is nice. Yes. Are we good to go? Yeah. Okay, that's nice. Please. Okay, thank you very much. Are we done?
Yes, sir, we are done.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Proud of you. Please watch out for the next edition of Settlement Hour, and then when our training comes on, we'll definitely put you in charge, and it will be wonderful. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it. Yes. Yes, I can see it. Thank you very much. Funke, thank you for joining us. Yes, I can see. Oh, yes, Helen, thank you for coming. Yes, thank you. Andrew, thank you for being with us. Shoma, thank you. Samira, thank you. Yes, Techno. I can see Mivani. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Victor, we can't thank you enough. We really appreciate your time. We are very happy to have you around. we are hoping that the next edition will be a wonderful one. Remember, we are looking at forgiveness, you know. Well, yes, forgiveness, what do you call it?
Apology,
forgiveness
and reconciliation. And reconciliation.
Yes, it will be another
apology, forgiveness, and reconciliation.
No, so please. Yes, thank you. Let's meet again, and that it will be a wonderful time. Thank you. Really appreciate. Yes. So, thank you once more. Thank you, the chairman, for coming. Yes. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I can see. Yes. Apology, forgiveness, and reconciliation. Yes. We are going to look at it and then in more details. Please make sure that you avail yourself for that. And for those of you who have not been trained, please, we'll reach out to you and then you'll be able to partake in the training. And thank you very much. Oh, I can see your honor, Dorcas Levy. Thank you for joining us. We are really grateful. I didn't know that you were around. Maybe I'm very happy to see you. We are very happy to have you around. Thank you. Mediator Vikram, we are very grateful. All the way from India. We are happy to have you around. We are really honored. We are really honored. Thank you very much for
Thank you, Danshan, for having me. But please, next time, please do it a little earlier so that I will be. So it's not 11:30 here. Almost 11:30 at night here.
Okay. Thank you, Dembo. Thank you for coming. Next time you come with your battalions.
We'll be there. Executive. Please, let's close the meeting. Mr. Vikram needs to sleep. He's quite late over there for him.
Okay, thank you very much. So have a nice day. Bye. Mr. Victor, thank you very much. Yes, thank you. Yes.
See you soon.
Have a nice